Hello, everyone, and welcome to this installment of the CEO interview. I'm your host, David Meyer, with my foolish colleague, Asit Sharma. Asit, how are you?
Doing very well, David. Excited for this.
Yeah, me too, because we have an incredible guest. We have the CEO of GE Healthcare Imaging, which is a $9 billion segment within GE Healthcare. Roland Roth. Hello, Roland. How are you?
Hello. Hi, David. Hi, Asit. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, we are too, and we're very glad to have you. So, let's kick off and start a little bit broad and talk about GE Healthcare, the overall business, sort of what its business model is and what its mission is.
Yeah, David. So GE Healthcare, I'm sure many of you will know, has been part of General Electric for the first 123 years, if you will, right? So General Electric was a very iconic, American company, highly successful in many fields, healthcare being one of them. So we have been essentially over 100 years in healthcare and have been at the forefront of innovation in all these, generations of medical devices and medical imaging. Now, what is very exciting is that a couple of years ago, beginning of 2023, we actually spun out of General Electric and we became an independent public company. So traded at NASDAQ, now being an independent freestanding public company with approximately $19.6 billion of revenues and serving ultimately more than 1 billion patients worldwide.
Wow.
1 billion patients worldwide across 160 countries. So it's a very significant impact this company has, a very strong legacy, but a very exciting future ahead also in this new phase of being a public company ourselves.
Yes, so a long time ago, I used to work at GE in what was known as the Power Systems segment. And I have to say, GE Healthcare back between 1998 and 2005 was always held up within the company as a great model. And so maybe let's talk a little bit about its business model. And that is, how do hardware sales, software sales, service agreement, how do those all tie together to basically be the operating engine for GE Healthcare?
Yeah, great question. And if you think about medical imaging and healthcare overall, right? What we provide essentially is solutions in order to detect diseases early, to diagnose disease, to ultimately support treatments and monitor these treatments, monitor the health of patients. So as GE Healthcare, we are active in all this spectrum, and we are doing that with a strategy which is what we call the D3 strategy. So we want to provide smart devices, right? Devices which are smart, which are intelligent. We will talk about artificial intelligence, so they are substantially AI enabled, but also smart drugs. And we align those smart devices and drugs on certain disease states, for example, cancer, right? Or cardiovascular disease. And then we also provide digital solution. We leverage the data which these devices are generating in these specific disease areas as physicians use it. And putting all that together provide solutions which can really improve and impact patient outcomes. So that is in essence what we provide. Again, relevant hardware, smart devices. Think about systems like CT or MR or ultrasound devices. So these are technologies which allow physicians to take a look at patients' conditions and then using the relevant software to get to a good diagnosis and to ultimately make meaning of what these devices actually are producing. And from a business model standpoint, once we are offering these devices, they are obviously in use for an extended period of time. So we also provide services in order to keep everything not only up and running, but also up to date. So we also keep customers vital with newer possibilities such as new versions of AI, etc.
Roland, let's stick with product for a moment. Could you break down for our members what are the major product areas within the imaging segment?
Yes, so I would you can almost define it by the generation it was sort of created. So when imaging was starting like 100 years ago, we only had X-ray, right? X-ray was the first modality, and it was a foundational one for many further on technologies like mammography, is a piece of it which we use in breast cancer screening. We then had the rise of CT, which is again technology-wise X-ray based. Then came MRI, right? A very revolutionary way to look inside, the human body without ionization and with very powerful capabilities. And I would say in the last phase, you have this field of molecular imaging, which essentially combines some of the traditional capability like CT and MR with additional sensors, with additional detectors, which can actually allow physicians to look at or inside body find cancers through radioisotopes, so radioactive drugs, slight radioactive drugs, which are injected and ultimately can visualize and target specific cancers, as an example. So very, very advanced technologies from a standpoint of imaging. And as you see in this range, right, all of these modalities have their particular areas of use. They have their designation. They have obviously their different reach. It's easier to deploy a mobile X-ray device than a big iron, if you will, MR device or a PET CT system. But they have a significant impact on patients.
And if I were to ask you, out of these, which products maybe are driving the most value for the imaging segment, what would those be? I have an idea that part of it might be related to the PET type products, so these nuclear tracing products, but would love to hear from you. What is, looking into the future, the biggest driver of value for going forward?
Yeah, so if we look at it, we can look at it from a lens of patients and obviously from a lens of, from a financial and from a business standpoint. I would really, starting on the patient side, we always put patients first. We would say that, there's at least in mature markets, there's good coverage on some of these earlier imaging technologies, but there's yet a lot of potential to provide patients more access to contemporary MRI or to PET CT and PET MR, so this molecular imaging space. These are areas which keep growing substantially because they don't have the visibility, and on the other hand, molecular imaging or theranostics, which combines therapy and diagnostic, actually is still growing in its clinical applications. So there are more types of disease which can actually be handled with those technologies. So we do expect, from a business standpoint, significant growth over the next years in these areas of molecular imaging, advanced therapies, but still also in these traditional technologies, you could say, which help reach more patient or make physicians more efficient in order to handle the patient volume, which we simply have to deal with.
And from an investment standpoint, I'm curious, where are you focusing most of your R&D?
Look, I think in general, when it comes to R&D, we work in the lifecycle approach vis-a-vis all of these technologies. So we have opportunities, for example, in CT to work on some more advanced next generation capabilities. As we announced, we're working on a deep silicon, a silicon-based photon-counting architecture, which we believe will take the possibility of CT another step forward, right? And that after CT has been around for such a long time. When we think about molecular imaging, it's a big area of investment because there is so much new capability with new radioisotopes available. So in that sense, it makes sense to invest further in creating more applications and putting these technologies in the hand of more physicians. So ultimately, we do invest today, as we are a standalone public company, factually more than ever before from a nominal standpoint. And we have a rich pipeline, which definitely fuels also further growth based on that investment.
Yeah, I think this is a good segue to talk a little bit more broadly about innovation, especially since you're at all-time highs for R&D budgets. So innovation is definitely within the lifeblood of GE. When I was there, it was extremely important and became even more important under Jeff Immelt when he became CE, and that's when I left. But I'm sure it's still extremely important to the culture. So maybe can you give some examples of how innovation is working within healthcare or imaging, if you wanted to go specifically there? And it can be anything. It can be maybe a product upgrade or even, a major breakthrough that gets you into a new market.
Right. Look, I would say one of the biggest areas of innovation, and also going back to investments, is of course artificial intelligence, AI, deep learning, right, in the context of healthcare. AI has been around for some time, right? So AI principle has been around for several decades. However, with the rise of possibilities, with the possibilities NVIDIA provided us, for example, to have very powerful capabilities within a computer, we are now able to process large amounts of data, and that ultimately can help to make these systems and smart devices even smarter. So we invested significantly in AI. Today, actually, we are a leading company in the field of AI. We have more than 85 FDA-cleared medical devices today in the market. So they are cleared, they are commercially available, and they help physicians to treat patients more efficiently, and on the other hand, deal with this large amount of patient volume and get to better insights. It's really important for us to help physicians and see AI as a partner, right? Often it's used as a co-pilot to augment the possibilities of physicians and helping them get to the result with confidence, as efficient as possible, and that way also help to improve the outcomes. So if I give you a few examples, we have been able with AI to streamline the reconstruction time, first of all, and the processing time in MR by more than 70%. So, and in cardiology, even 83%. So we are able to slash these exam times, and that means it's more comfortable for a patient. You don't need to, lay in such a device for an extended period of time. Think about many patients which are in the queue. If you can be faster, you can handle more patients in the same time frame. And ultimately, we have also been able to improve that image quality. So make this image quality more robust, take certain artifacts away, etc. So give the physicians a cleaner image. So in that sense, ability to confidently screen or diagnose. So this is just one example where our AI, already makes a significant impact. And with the technology I described, we have already, handled more than 30 million patients, actually. So this is quite proven. This is not in the infancy stage.
Maybe I'll follow on with an AI question. And we'll start internally and work our way out. So it's very clear that data is, the creation of data from your machines is very important. Maybe internally, how are your teams using AI to maybe get a little bit more marginal in return on the R&D budget, things like that?
So I would say it's very interesting, your question, because we can use, of course, AI for creating solutions. We can also use AI in the process of creating these solutions. So my early example, and that's really our evolution, we started with customers first. We started actually to use AI first, to create solutions which make an impact. And maybe it also related to the timing, because we were in COVID. We had a lot of challenges, in many of our customers and physicians had challenges to deal with the load of patients, etc. So we were very focused on using AI to create solutions which make an impact on patients. And while doing though, right, we then, and in recent years, spent also quite some efforts to look at the process. And as you will know, right, there's a lot of documentation required in medical device generation. There's a strong quality management framework, which we are adhering to, regulatory requirements. So today we actually find a lot of opportunity to use AI to augment our engineers in doing exactly that work, and also be more productive that way, get more agile, shorten some of the creation time, or if you will, get more output in the same period of time. That last piece still has a lot of potential. We are just at the beginning, really, of unlocking that, and I think we're going to keep learning, and we're going to keep evolving, obviously, as we also get more possibilities with AI.
Maybe before Aset asks his question, I'll just have one comment. So I used to be a black belt in the old Six Sigma realm. Is AI basically Six Sigma on steroids now? I mean, it's like the next 10 levels higher type of a thing.
Yeah, so maybe to translate, so Six Sigma is one approach which also General Electric has used early on, and also relates to lean, right? And lean is very much a culture, and it's also a set of tools of continuous improvement and to take waste out, for example, of processes. So in that sense, you could say AI is a close cousin. It's a tool which allows us to do exactly that. And ironically, as you mentioned this point, we actually implemented lean or re-implemented lean very substantially over the last years in parallel to AI. We deployed, lean very consequently. Larry Culp, who is the CEO of GE and came into GE, is our chairman today, with his vast lean experience, inspired that. And today, actually, we both deploy lean and use AI to get more, to get processes more efficient, to take waste out, to actually speed up and be productive.
Yeah.
All in the spirit of, serving customers faster, but also obviously as precise as needed.
Yeah, I think philosophically, Kaizen, the theory of like continuous improvement, aligns very well with AI, because you can use AI, as you said, within teams to become more efficient. So I think they're very much closely related, the concepts. But I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier, because I think many of our members will have an interest in sort of the competitive edge that imaging solutions has. You talked about the clarity of images that have been enabled by AI. So basically, we have a scan, and in any number of outputs, you have a visualization, which is then, I would call it as a layperson, almost recreated by AI. So some of the noise gets removed, and you have more signal. The image has more clarity, but at the end of the day, it's an algorithmic type of improvement. So we're sort of curious, what kind of edge is this vis-a-vis competitors? For example, someone using these images, a physician, maybe has a higher confidence level in his or her diagnostic capability if the image is better. And as you already mentioned, it cuts down on the time it takes to run the test and get all the way to a diagnosis. Is this something that a competitor could also, working in an AI kitchen, come up with? Or do you have some type of clear edge versus those who offer similar products?
Yeah, look, I think in principle, and that's always true, right? All these capabilities are in theory available to many, right? And so we see a lot of innovation, generally speaking, when it comes to AI in healthcare. And let me also say that we are cultivating a pretty open ecosystem. So we are not only creating our own AI, we are partnering very closely with, with customers, which can be very large, healthcare systems, generating a lot of data, applying that, having their own models, and then ultimately, that can lead to some startup which ultimately offers that, and we integrate that. So we are really using, the broader ecosystem lens here. We have also acquired a few companies over the last years in the space of AI, such as Caption Health in ultrasound, or MIM, right, in the space of molecular imaging software, as I mentioned before. So they all use AI, and they all are enhancing, so to say, what we organically do. But really, to your question of competitiveness, we do believe, and based on the facts that we started early and we have a lead in, FDA-cleared medical devices today, a lot of, customers look at that and understand that, we invested into this space, we created meaningful, impactful solutions, and that gives us credibility to further charge ahead and creating, further such solutions. We have just started, if you will, with these first 85, but some of those AI applications have been very narrowly focused on improving a certain image area and so forth. But we have now, extended the field quite broadly to also create solutions which combine such, exams across modalities. So think about a care pathway where a patient first gets diagnosed with an ultrasound system or gets screened with an ultrasound system. In mammography, you use mammography, you then use MRI, so you go through these different technologies, and as more and more data is generated, how can we use AI also to give physicians a comprehensive summary and comprehensive insight about the patient's condition? Those kind of applications are actually now really interesting based on the possibilities we have found. So it's really innovating the specific individual smart devices is one, but it's creating solutions across the care pathway, which have a lot of even more impact.
And it sounds like that plays well into what we hear about the company in general, that you're moving towards digital transformation, more recurring revenue, a model that is getting a lot of value out of an ecosystem. So software as a service, not just selling devices as, maybe we thought of the company many, many years ago. Would that be fair to say?
Very fair to say. So we actually even brought additional competency to the team that way, right? If you look at our leadership appointments, we brought a number of senior leaders into the company, which come from the domain of cloud first, SaaS first. Taha Kasood leads our science and technology organization. He's a medical doctor, in fact, Dr. Taha Kasood. He used to work at the FDA before he was in a senior role at Amazon, and then joined us as our chief technology officer. So we created, capabilities in the company, in the team, which augment the vast experience we have for such a long time and allow us now to create these solutions. And to your question, yes, 100%, we are not only deploying these solutions as a conventional, like sell a system business model, but also offering more solutions and on a SaaS level, so software as a service or solution as a service business model. And especially for customers who appreciate there's so much more potential with these kinds of solutions to know, they are essentially subscribing to that, and they will have all these future iterations with it. It's very much a peace of mind aspect also for customers to know they can always be at the forefront and have the latest and greatest.
Nice. So sticky for you, but also peace of mind for the customer.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I'm curious on that. Does that actually keep you at the leading edge of your markets? Does that question make sense? Basically, if you are giving new solution capabilities to leading hospitals or your research hospitals or anything like that, you're basically, my mind is saying you will see what sort of these people need as a leading edge technology, and you can work together to develop it, and that sort of keeps enhancing the positional advantage that you have. Is that fair to say?
I mean, look, if we are running, so if you and I would run a bigger healthcare system today, right, and you have all these operational challenges when it comes to reimbursement, you're finding the right staff, keeping your team, and all these operational challenges paired with the need to advance and provide top-class medical services. You look for a partner who can ultimately help you achieve that. It is about understanding these customer needs, and a lot of customers tell us that we are their partner because not only do we have these smart devices and the obvious solutions, but we are making a huge effort to understand that customer challenge, link our solutions to it, and then really help innovate further from there. And I would say our business model in last years has also evolved to the solutions. We are, we recently announced a very large partnership with Sutter Health in California, which is more than $1 billion contract. If you think about that, it's probably one of the biggest contracts we ever had. And that is a long-term partnership, which not only looks at what's available today, but it's ultimately keeping that customer current, keep understanding these challenges and keep that operational performance, if you will, and those operational goals aligned with what we can provide. So yes is the answer, right? The combination of having contemporary medical devices which are smart, aligning them to disease states, using the data with all the possibilities we today have, and be that best partner for customers is a reason why customers choose for us. And we are delighted. It's a privilege to serve them.
So would an example of this be, I know you have a partnership with Amazon Web Services, so you provide, I think, imaging on an enterprise level. Is this the type of thing that you're signing more of? That we love this word in our side of the world, enterprise business, because those are business with deep pockets, and those tend to be long-term relationships. But yeah, maybe you could illustrate for us, little bit of detail. If you have an enterprise relationship, what are the takeaways on the customer side? Is it in imaging and then analytics on that data later on? Is it a combination of, let's say, a hardware? Maybe they're licensing hardware products in some cases, but also having the software continuous with that.
So talking about partners, I would characterize different kinds of partners, right? You're right. We at Amazon Web Services, we have a strategic collaboration, which is in the area of creating foundation models. So really AI models, foundation models, based on, again, the possibilities Amazon Web Services can provide, dealing with the vast amounts of data, and also being a partner. Amazon Web Services is a partner to many of our customers who generate that data. So that is one type of partner. NVIDIA, I could mention, as another one, which we have just announced a new partnership in the context of autonomous imaging. NVIDIA clearly in the forefront of technology, having access to that technology and envisioning together what the next generation of more autonomous medical devices could look like is a very exciting, trajectory. So technology partners one end, but on the other end, it really is customer partners, right? We are partnering with St. Joseph, for example, London St. Joseph, and also Lawson Health Research in this area of theranostics, which I mentioned earlier, where it's about molecular imaging, combining diagnosis and therapy to target specific cancers. And as they do that, a lot of data is generated, and we can then in such partnership agree to reuse some of the data to make these medical devices smarter again, train them further, and again have a next version, a next increment of possibilities. So it really is both aspects. We are looking very much at innovation from a standpoint of developing innovation through an ecosystem, combined with the significant R&D possibilities we have in-house.
I'm still trying to digest all of that, but it's amazing, again, thinking about what I know of the culture of innovation, where technology is advancing, making partnerships to improve your position. I mean, that's just creating, like I said, an advantage that you can continue to strengthen incrementally over time as you continue to focus on all those things. And I think there's a lot to be said for the quality of a business if you can do those things, and it speaks to the longevity of GE Healthcare. And it's great as investors with long-term mindsets to understand foundationally how these things can change over time, and a business can still be in a leadership position. But I think what we'll do now is we'll take a little journey to the present, and right now the macro environment is kind of interesting. May we live in interesting times is a quote that keeps coming up. So while this story is still unfolding, how have changes in the macro tariffs or policy changes or higher interest rates, or how is GE Healthcare and GE Healthcare Imaging navigating in a very different environment that we've had over the last few years?
Yes, look, I would say, specific over the last years, right? Specific to changes, I think we had no shortage of change, right? We had once in a century kind of challenges like COVID, right? We had supply chain challenges. We had a chip crisis, if you will, so availability of semiconductors at some point, logistic challenges, and you can ultimately say there's been almost no year in the last 5 years where there wasn't something significant happening, which also affects the way how we are serving customers and how businesses are run. I think the positive of that is such times can also condition you, right? So such times also create first of all, make you aware of, the strength and the vulnerabilities. And we started after COVID to really reflect on that deeply and saying, how is the way how we serve customers, for example, how can that be improved if something happens which influences our supply chain so much? That led to a change in the way how we set up our supply chains. Where are we sourcing things? Do we do the same product only in one place in the world and fly to all the other places, or do we ultimately bring it closer to customers and have multi-tier, if you will, setups? And this is the outcome. So you hear we are learning through these challenges. We have adapted quite substantially our supply chain, our manufacturing footprint. Today we have a very large footprint with 43 sites worldwide in 17 countries. So that gives us some flexibility to evolve, to further adapt when a new situation such as with tariffs comes up. So that is really how we respond to that, right? We respond to what we can control. We also take the learnings out of it. And the fact that we are a global player and we have this scale allows us truly also to, de-risk, if you will, the footprint and be present in more than one place.
I was curious, speaking of that macro environment and having, what's a dispersed supply chain now, just the flip side of that question, which is, as you look around the world, opportunities for revenue growth. We know that GE Healthcare as a business has significant opportunity in China, even though we have had several near-term issues there, tariffs, the Chinese government stimulus program, and the like. But maybe near-term and looking out a little bit longer, especially for the imaging business, what opportunity is there in China? Is that going to be a focus area for the company, or maybe is it one that the company will be a little more cautious as a growth area going forward?
Yeah, and specifically to the recent developments, we are just in a closed period, right? The second quarter was obviously one with a lot of changes in that regard with the policies. So I can't comment on the short term as much until our earnings on July 30. However, if you look at China really from a longer term trajectory, I mentioned earlier, we have been in China for a very long time. In fact, the first GE products were used in China more than 100 years ago, X-ray products. And we have been a substantial partner to many Chinese healthcare professionals over all that time. In the worst times of COVID, actually, we served Chinese hospitals with equipment and with services. So we are a very reputable player in the China market. China as a market is one with more than a billion, people, with an aging population. So we will expect also future further demand for healthcare services to grow. And so in that sense, the China market as such has been and is an attractive long-term opportunity, certainly also from today's perspective. Now, all that said, it is a matter of resiliency and is a matter of how do we set ourselves up. And what did we do is, over the last years, we localized a lot of our activities, meaning certain products which were only created outside of China, we brought into China, strengthened our local supply chain and manufacturing setups. So we have a significant presence there in order to ultimately unlock that opportunity. Our focus remains on, yes, growth, absolutely, from a global standpoint. China is an attractive long-term growth market. So are others.
Yeah, and staying on the growth topic, which is a favorite of ours. We love companies that innovate and grow. What is your vision for advancing precision healthcare and improving patient outcomes, and how does that translate into the growth that you're looking for over the long term?
Yeah, I think really the factor of applying digital capabilities in the context of medical devices and aligning that to disease states such as cancer, right, or a neurological disease or cardiac disease. By the way, all of these three are on the rise, right? They are all today at highest levels ever, and they keep rising on a global basis. So we will have continued high demand for imaging services to screen, to diagnose, to treat. And in that sense, we have today more possibilities with technology than ever before. Combining these elements, using AI, being a leader in this space, allows us to provide solutions which matter. And if we give you a concrete example, take lung cancer, right? It's one very silent disease. Lung cancer is often, it's highly underdiagnosed. It's actually more people are dying every year from lung cancer than prostate cancer, breast cancer, and colon cancer combined, right? So it's a significant challenge. And only 18% of patients who actually will get the cancer survive more than 5 years. So this is one example of a complex disease, underdiagnosed, having significant impact. And if we now combine some of our technologies like CT or actually X-ray, combine that with these care pathway solutions and provide ability to diagnose this risk earlier, in the earlier stages of cancer, the chance to treat and to ultimately heal is much higher than in a further advanced stage. So that is really the vision we have. We can substantially help healthcare systems to become more efficient, but we can especially help patients to have potentially a better outcome if their disease is detected, diagnosed, and treated as early as possible. And this actually gets us truly up every day. We are aware of our impact. It's what keeps our entire workforce up. And we love to hear examples of that impact coming back from patients and physicians actually as well.
Roland, we're almost out of time, so I would love for you to talk about one more example that I find really interesting, and then David can take us out with a final question. But for our members, could you explain what, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Flecardo is?
That's a great question. So Flecardo is radioisotope. So it's essentially such a slightly I always say slightly radioactive. We shouldn't think this is the same exposure as we are afraid of. So it's a slightly radioactive isotope which gets injected in the patient. With that, we have an ability to assess the function of a heart, right? Whether there is a cardiovascular problem with that patient, and we can assess that today more accurately than with prior technologies which have been existing in molecular imaging. So Flecardo has been a novel development of our company. We have just launched Flecardo. There is significant interest from cardiologists to use that technology in combination with our molecular imaging devices. We expect significant growth of that application, and in that sense, it's certainly one of the very interesting growth drivers for the company as well.
So with that, I think we're just about out of time. Asit, I want to thank you for your awesome questions, and obviously, Roland, thank you so much for your time, sharing your expertise and your knowledge. It's just great to be able to talk to CEOs like you and to learn again how all these things work together. Just innovation is a squishy term, right? But when you translate that into, hey, this is how we're using AI to innovate, to make our products better, to make our software better, to make patient outcomes better, we get a better understanding of how your business works and how businesses can thrive in general. So thank you for that.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you for your curiosity. Real pleasure to go through these areas. And as I mentioned, the good thing is we have so much opportunity on one hand. At the same time, there is a significant demand. So we are excited to be in a field where we can make a significant impact on patients' lives. And that also rallies our innovation, our future perspective. Thank you very much.